everyone. Welcome to Thought Leadership Thursday. Today, I have Amy Spikes with me from Select Custom Solutions. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Lynn.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. What does Select Custom Solutions do?
So, Select Custom Solutions specializes in powder blending, offering services in contract manufacturing, ingredient distribution, and functional ingredient blends. We've been providing bulk and retail options to some of the world's leading food, beverage, and nutritional brands since 1989. Select Custom Solutions specialty ingredient blends cater to companies looking for baking ingredients, dough conditioners and developers, protein products, stabilizer systems, and anti-caking agents. We provide options for companies seeking functional or economic alternatives to traditional ingredients. And we also provide off-the-shelf options and customized ingredient blends and turnkey products according to the needs of our customers.
You're the food technologist there, so you must be behind a lot of these projects. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit more about yourself, Amy.
So I have a bachelor's degree in food science from UW-Madison, in addition to a minor in European studies, and I love baking.
That's
I'm,
awesome. You
I
need to
know.
love baking to do
I
this.
mean, you gotta, right?
Yeah.
I'm a food technologist on the food and beverage innovation team at Select Custom Solutions, where I've worked for over 7.5 years. My role involves technical services and product development, where I work with customers and their applications, in addition to innovation on our branded ingredient portfolio.
That's great. So this is what I want to cover on today is the high protein, keto friendly, lower carb trend that we are all experiencing here in the baking industry. What do you know about that trend? So let's talk about the basics, the fundamentals. Let's cover what's carbs, and how can we, replace those.
Sure. Carbohydrates are simple to complex structures consisting of small sugar molecules. Now, when I say sugar, most people think table sugar or sucrose, but that's just one of many types of sugars. Other sugars include fructose, glucose, lactose, etc. Carbs consist of three main groups: sugars, starches, and fiber. Sugars are typically derived from plants. Table sugar or sucrose is derived from sugar cane or sugar beets. Fruits, honey, agave, and maple syrup are also sources of plant-based simple sugars. Lactose is the only sugar that cannot be extracted from plants. It's derived from milk and can be found in many dairy products. Starches are produced by most plants as a means of energy storage and are the most common form of carbohydrates in the human diet. Starches are typically able to be broken down by human digestive enzymes into their individual sugar units for energy. And common sources of starches include corn, potatoes, rice, cassava, and wheat. Finally, we have fiber, and fiber is also plant derived, but typically cannot be broken down by digestive enzymes. Fiber can be further split into two categories: soluble and insoluble. Soluble fiber, also known as prebiotic fiber, dissolves in water. Some sources include psyllium, inulin, and beta-glucans, which are often found in oats and mushrooms. Next, we have insoluble fiber, which does not dissolve in water and provides bulk. Examples include wheat bran, nuts, and vegetables.
That's interesting because you just talked about good carbs and bad carbs, right? Before we go into really understanding how to replace them, what is the function of carbohydrates in traditional baking?
Sure. So let's break them down into their three components again. So sugars have a lot of functionality in baking, which is why they can be difficult to replace sometimes. They impart sweetness as well as browning and flavor from caramelization and Maillard reactions. Sugars provide bulk and structure to baked goods in addition to food for yeast. Sugars also contribute to tenderness and softness, as well as increased shelf life due to moisture retention and lowering the water activity. There are many types of sugars in baking. There's the traditional table sugar or sucrose, as well as many liquid sugars and syrups, including corn syrup, molasses, honey, and agave. Lactose is another sugar that can be used in baking and can be found in many dairy ingredients or added separately. Starch is also highly functional in baking. Starch gelatinizes during baking to help provide structure to baked goods. Starch also has considerable water holding capacity, which adds viscosity to doughs and batters for increased gas retention, along with retaining water during shelf life. One of the most common forms of starch in traditional baking is wheat starch from wheat flours. Varieties include all-purpose, bread, pastry, cake, high gluten, and whole wheat. And these all have varying amounts of protein and starch, and the use depends on the final application. Other common sources of starch in baking include corn, potato, tapioca, and rice. And lastly, we have fiber. Fiber typically increases water absorption and viscosity in baked goods. Soluble fiber can form gels and therefore can increase foam stability and help with gas retention in batters and doughs. This can reinforce the gluten and other protein networks responsible for structure. However, if too much is added, dough development can be delayed, leading to a slack dough. Insoluble fiber can add bulk to baked goods. However, too much insoluble fiber can decrease foam stability and can destabilize batters and doughs. This in turn can reduce low volume and increase firmness. Insoluble fiber can hold on to a lot of water, which can reduce the amount available for gluten formation. In traditional baking, fiber isn't always added as a separate ingredient and is often a byproduct of flours, especially whole wheat or whole grain products. However, with increased demand for added fiber and reduced carbs in foods, more manufacturers are adding fiber to formulations.
That is true. I mean, with the keto friendly trend, we are actually substituting some of the carbs with fibers. Um, what do you know about that? Let's talk about that a little bit more.
At Select Custom Solutions, we use tools to help track things like consumer preferences, buying trends, market insights, and product performance to help us stay in touch with consumers and the market. Two such market intelligence agencies that we refer to are Mintel and Innova. Now, according to Mintel, nearly 1 in 5 bread shoppers in the US say that they are looking for low or reduced carb options. In addition to that, Mintel also states that the average carbohydrate content in bread launches in recent years has decreased. Demand is also up for reduced carbs in most baked goods across the board, as Innova reports that new bakery product launches featuring a low carb claim grew 22% from 2019 to 2021, and launches with keto grew 88% in the same time period.
So, what are net carbs and how do they differ from total carbs?
Sure. Net carbs are calculated from subtracting the amount of fiber and sugar alcohols from the amount of total carbs in a food item. This is a rough calculation, as this assumes that the fiber and sugar alcohols are not metabolized and absorbed. However, this isn't always true, as some are partially digested and therefore still provide calories as well as impact blood sugar. Some labels try to account for this by dividing the amount of sugar alcohols in the net carb calculation by 2. This stems from the fact that many sugar alcohols, except for erythritol, supply around 2 calories per gram, whereas sugars provide 4 calories per gram. For reference, 1 gram of carbs and protein each contains 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat contains 9 calories.
So while we're into talking about net carbs, what are some of the methods to cutting these net carbs?
Right. Like we talked about before, net carbs are calculated by subtracting the amount of fiber and sugar alcohols from the amount of total carbs. So if you increase the amount of fiber, then the net carbs will decrease. Some carbs can also be replaced by fiber. For example, inulin, a soluble fiber, can be used in sugar replacement as it adds bulk and has some natural sweetness, although not as much as sugar. This leads me to the next method of carb reduction, sugar replacement. Sugar replacement can be made possible with the addition of high-intensity sweeteners, which can be hundreds of times sweeter than sugar. Examples include artificial forms like sucralose, ACE-K, and aspartame, and naturally derived forms like stevia and monk fruit. Sugar replacement can be accomplished with sugar alcohols like erythritol, maltitol, and xylitol. They're typically not as sweet as sugar, but they are able to add bulk to food items when sugar is being replaced. However, sugar alcohols do not brown like other sugars, so the color of baked goods might be affected by their use. Substituting some carbs with protein is another technique to reduce carbs. Common protein replacements include dairy proteins or plant proteins like pea and almond. Alternative flour blends are generally an easy way for bakers to reduce carbs in baking by partially or totally replacing traditional wheat flour. And they can include added fiber and protein for reduced carbs and added nutrition.
Sugar replacement is so difficult to do. If you are going to replace the sweetness, you have to also think about, the browning, the bulking, the
Mm.
other functions of sugar. So for any baker to just replace sugar in any formulation, it will take them a long time to figure it out. I mean, because it's not easy, right? So you mentioned that you have your own reduced carb flour blend. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. We have an item called Bakegen Carb Cut gluten-free flour, which is part of our Bakegen line of bakery ingredients and blends. Carb Cut is a reduced net carb flour blend that can be used in place of traditional all-purpose flour and gluten-free flour blends. Carb
Interesting.
Cut,
So our gluten-free bakers, that's one of the biggest issue with gluten-free is we replace a lot of the gluten functionality with pre-gels and modified starches. So what you're offering is a reduced carb version of that.
right. It's a unique blend of almond protein, dairy protein, soluble fiber, and functional starches, and is gluten-free.
Neat, neat.
Yeah, gluten-free is very popular these days due to the prevalence of celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, and diet preferences. According to Mintel, 14% of all food and drink launches from April 2022 to March 2023 had a gluten-free claim. However, Mintel notes that 24% of Americans agree that the nutritional value of gluten-free products is poor compared to products that do contain gluten. Gluten-free flour blends are generally made up with lots of starches to make up for wheat flour, which can make their carbs even higher than that of wheat flour. Bakegen Carb Cut was formulated to reduce carbohydrates and increase protein and fiber in baking applications, so you can substitute this highly effective gluten-free flour into most formulas for a net carb reduction and a boost in protein and fiber. Carb Cut has more than a 60% reduction in net carbs compared to all-purpose wheat flour, along with commercial gluten-free flour blends. Carb Cut has neutral color and flavor, and we've had success with it in multiple applications like cakes, cookies, muffins, brownies, pancakes, donuts, pie crust, and even a yeasted focaccia flatbread. Slight liquid modifications might need to be made for wheat-based flour formulations, but Carb Cut can be used as a one-for-one replacement in most gluten-free formulations. So if you're looking for a low-carb flour alternative that will also add protein and fiber, give Bakegen Carb Cut a try.
Sounds like a great solution to gluten-free and low carb, Amy. If bakers have more questions, how can they reach out?
Sure, people can visit our LinkedIn or email us at info@select-cs.com. People can also go to our website, selectcustomsolutions.com, and contact us or request a sample. We also have Carb Cut baking guides and samples of a mug cake with Carb Cut available to see it in action. In addition to Carb Cut, we also have other baking blends and ingredients, including milk and egg alternatives, dough conditioners and developers, proteins for protein fortification, and complete baking mixes. We also work with customers to create custom blends to suit their specific needs. People can also check out our other Bakerpedia Thought Leadership Thursday videos that talk about dough conditioners and egg replacement as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming on today, Amy. And we will include all the links down below so that you can check out all the carb cutting techniques that Amy talked about. Thank you.
Thank you.